So this is it. We've made it to the end of 2025. When it comes to going to the movies, there's not much worse than seeing a movie you are so excited for, only to leave disappointed. But those are the movies we are talking about today. Today I am sharing my picks for the 10 most disappointing movies of 2025. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Share your picks for the most disappointing movies of 2025. Now, when we say most disappointing, we don't mean the worst movies. You can like a movie, but still be very disappointed by it. Disappointment is when there's the biggest gap between what you expected and what you got. It can be bad. It can be a movie that's good, but that you thought was going to be awesome. One more thing before we get started, there is a companion video to this over on my Patreon page with 10 of the most surprising movies of 2025. The movies that came out of nowhere and that I just loved, the movies that I expected to be bad, which far exceeded my expectations. Over on Patreon, I've done 40 Q&As this year, 20 box office shows, 12 reaction times, and more exclusive videos. And if you use promo code Sean26, you can get 26% off an annual membership. Consider joining over on Patreon, and with promo code Sean26, you can get 26% off a new annual membership. And let's get started. First up, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. Now, to be perfectly clear, I did enjoy this movie. I gave it a positive review. I completely stand by that. I don't think that this is an outright bad film, but it is a very disappointing final Mission Impossible movie. Considering how consistently great this franchise has been for like 20 years, and that how long they spent making this movie, how much money they spent making this movie, and that they sold it as this big, epic two-part finale, it really did not live up to the hype in a way that made a lot of people kind of go, maybe they should have just ended with Fallout. There's a few different problems here. First off, there's just way too much exposition.
We hate exposition, but we don't avoid it. We shoot it and overshoot it and over inform and over include, and then are constantly pulling it back.
That it is just such a convoluted plot, over-explaining everything, pausing to remind you of previous movies constantly for a movie that's a part two. There's already a setup movie, but still it's like this movie has to spend an hour and a half setting things up before we get to the first big, gigantic set piece in the movie. Second off, it's a movie that just makes some very goofy decisions in terms of just trying to tie back to other characters in a way that this franchise has never really been about that sort of thing. So all of a sudden, Jon Voight's son from the first movie shows up and you're like, what are we doing here? And then it's simply just way too long of a film and has a very forgettable villain, an underwhelming exploration of AI, and it's just frustrating because when it hits, it's as awesome as ever. Next up, Megan 2.0, and boy, did they drop the ball on this franchise. The original Megan was this really pleasant surprise that was nice entry-level horror that gave us a fun new killer doll. It was just comedic enough to be memeable, something you could share on TikTok, had the cool dance in it, but still stuck to the horror genre and had some like really clever ideas about codependency, AI, and some other stuff that just felt a little bit more clever than it had any right to be. And instead of coming up with an equally clever sequel, it's like they went in entirely the wrong direction, where people said, you should probably go a little bit more horror. Instead, they leaned entirely into the TikTokable moments, and they did like Terminator 2 with Megan, both in terms of turning it into a sci-fi action blockbuster, as well as making it in Megan the hero of the story. And it's like they completely misread the room, went in completely the wrong direction, and it's like a spy movie with a way too convoluted of a plot that abandons all the things that kind of worked, that pulled the original one together in favor for totally generic blockbustery stuff. It's watchable. Like, I don't think it's like a total disaster of a movie. It's just a complete misstep in terms of the direction that they went. 8, Love Hurts. I really wanted to love this movie, and it simply wasn't good. It is an action movie from 87 North. This is the production company that the John Wick guys started, that did the movie Nobody and Violent Night. And it stars Ke Huy Quan, who won an Oscar for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And he's someone that knows martial arts, was a stunt coordinator, and kind of after winning an Oscar, wanted to do an action movie with a production company that has a history of making action movies that I really enjoyed. And this one just did not work. It was like a movie that the central premise, just the motivation, the characters, the story, it's just all just mush of cliches, but not done right, and like stacking them on top of each other in ways that didn't complement each other. And some of the action, it's like okay, but not enough to elevate a movie that just gives you nothing to latch onto, nothing to care about, with a tone that feels like it's spiraling out of control and can't quite lock in enough on what it's trying to be. And so just a film that on paper looked like a movie for a strong contender to be way up on my list for the year, and ended up at the bottom. Speaking of 87 North disappointments, Nobody 2. Man, I loved the first Nobody movie, and it's actually the film, it stars Bob Odenkirk in an action movie, that made me go back and finally watch all of Better Call Saul. And this is another sequel that I think just kind of misread the room, misunderstood what people loved about the first one, and leaned in entirely the wrong direction, where the first one had a sense of humor to it, but it played it straight as an action movie, but had a subtle humor built into it. And you cared about the characters first, and the second one tried to do like 3 things at once. Be more comedic. It tried to be like National Lampoon's Vacation as a Nobody movie, which kind of lent that comedic side to it, but also tried to stick to the same template as the first movie, with the same beats at the same point in time. And those goals don't line up right. Like, Vacation is not the same structure as the first movie, and the structure of the first movie worked because it was a guy who in his normal life had a secret from his family and was pulled back into a world. And that's just not what the plot of the second movie is as this road trip film. And so everything felt forced, and like we're just trying to do another one of that sequence from the first movie. And as someone that loves this genre, that is a sucker for these movies, I just couldn't get into it the way that I wanted to. And so for me, totally watchable, totally disappointed. 28 years later, after a couple of decades, Danny Boyle, Alex Garland returned to the franchise. The trailers for this movie were works of art in and of themselves, and the movie at times lived up to exactly what I wanted it to be. But the film overall was too scattershot and inconsistent. And the big thing is that it just felt like each act had a wildly different tone from the other acts and was directed by someone entirely different. Where the first act is kind of a father-son coming-of-age story, intercut with like medieval battle footage, and then the middle one is just a standalone coming-of-age story with a mother, and it's like has this poignant exploration of life, and then it closes out with like Teletubbies Power Rangers that is a reference to a British figure that I don't really know who it is. It just felt so all over the place and inconsistent with itself that I could never fully embrace it. Elements were awesome. Elements were beautiful, terrifying, gory, nasty, but the whole didn't come together for me. Now, I have seen Bone Temple. I saw it actually a few weeks back. They did a super early screening here in town. That one I really enjoyed. And it was a consistent, focused film that delivered on what I hoped I would get from it. Fountain of Youth. This is the latest Guy Ritchie film. And I've actually really enjoyed most of the movies he's done over the last several years, where just he's making movies that are on my wavelength in genres that I enjoy. They're not all awesome, but they're movies that are very digestible for me. And so him doing an Indiana Jones style globetrotting adventure with John Krasinski and Natalie Portman, right up my alley. The movie itself was just so generic, so boilerplate, so by the numbers. It just added nothing new to the genre, and thus was so incredibly disappointing. I mean, they even go to some of the exact same locations that Indiana Jones went to, so it just reminded you so often of better movies in the exact same space. There's nothing memorable about the characters, the performances, and even as a Guy Ritchie movie, it lacked the Guy Ritchie-isms. It didn't have any of his unique stylistic flair added to the genre, so it just felt like a very generic adventure movie that anyone could have directed. So it didn't deliver on any of the promise of the potential of this team in this genre. Wolfman! This is the latest film from Lee Whannell. In his last couple of movies that he wrote and directed, I just thought were such tightly constructed little horror films. Upgrade, The Invincible Man, and in both cases, both of them were movies that I consistently felt like the script was smarter than me, that every time I started to piece it together and I thought I knew where it was going, it always had one more, ace up the sleeve, one more trick, one more way that it outmaneuvered me and delivered something better than what I was expecting. And that was just the exact opposite of what I got with his film Wolfman. That plays it so straightforward that the entire time I just kept waiting for something interesting, unexpected, different to happen. And it just played so linear of guy gets bit by a werewolf, slowly transitions, and his loved ones around him desperately try to stay alive while he's trying to get them. I mean, it's just like a movie other people have made. We've seen this type of movie, and it plays out the same way that all of these movies play out, without any memorable set pieces, unique gore, or clever twists on the genre. The exact thing that he was traditionally so good at, finding ways to write really smart versions of genre films. And it is none of that wit or intelligence in the way that this story was told. There's a little bit of creativity in the way that it shows the perspective of the Wolfman and kind of how he's losing his sanity. And otherwise, just a movie with nothing new to add to the genre. Real quick, before I give you my top three or bottom three or whatever, these aren't really in much of any particular order other than number one. But be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what are your picks for the most disappointing films of 2025? The movies that you were so excited for and they let you down. Not necessarily the worst, most disappointing. Also, I'm going to have a bunch of other end of the year videos, and I've already done some end of the year videos, so I'll have cards, pinned comments, whatever, to send you all those videos. Number three, Wicked for Good. As pleasant of a surprise as Wicked was last year for me, Wicked for Good was equally disappointing this year for me. I went into the original film with no real expectations, having never seen the musical, not a fan of that sort of thing at all, not a big Wizard of Oz person or anything like that. And the movie itself just absolutely won me over. It pulled me into the world. It absolutely convinced me of why the musical is so popular. I totally got it. And it made its way into my top 10 movies of the year, thus also one of my picks for most surprising films of the year. Thus, I was very excited. It had part two on my most anticipated list, and just on every single level, this movie wasn't as good. It was this very odd mix of feeling at the same, it concurrently felt like it was padding out the runtime because it was taking 40 minutes of the play and turning it into a 2-hour plus movie. But also it felt like it was speed running through too much plot because we're doing all of the Wizard of Oz and doing this rebellion against Oz all at kind of the same time. And so like rushing and padding out which are opposite things, but you felt it. Like, that was the confusion of the nature of this movie. The songs weren't as good. I mean, hey, the performances are still rock solid here. There's a couple sequences it was like, that was really cool. In particular, one that's a one-take shot kind of going through mirrors and stuff like that. But generally speaking, a movie that just never found its storytelling groove and was doing too much and too little all at once. The Smashing Machine. This is a film that I was very excited to check out because it's from one of the Safdie brothers. It's a sports biopic, a genre I tend to get into, and it was supposed to be a big dramatic comeback role for The Rock with a bunch of anticipation building up to it. And I thought The Rock did a really solid job in the movie. It was very much a transformative performance. It helps that he had the prosthetics and everything like that, but he was also playing a character where he couldn't lean into his usual charisma and swagger. He had to play someone different and emote more so than a lot of his roles. And the movie itself felt like a collection of solid scenes in search of a through line, in search of a plot. That the guy, Mark Kerr, that the film is about, there's all sorts of interesting things about him of being one of the early stars of the UFC, being someone that had a great hot streak and then had loss, and there was drug addiction, there was a very toxic relationship, there was the strange disconnect between the violence in the ring versus polite personality. And all of that's in the movie, but it never feels like a cohesive story. It's just little snapshots, glimpses of moments in his life where things aren't set up. You'll go into a big fight and you don't know why it matters or what outcome you're expecting or supposed to want from it. Suddenly we're in a toxic relationship, but it wasn't like it was set up. We didn't see it healthy or what the reason for him staying in it. We never fully understood any of the different pieces or his psychology. So it was like individual great moments all in kind of a mediocre film. But my pick for the most disappointing film of the year, Karate Kid Legends. I am a lifelong Karate Kid fan. My very first movie webpage was a Jackie Chan fan webpage. Huge fan of Cobra Kai, and the idea of doing a Karate Kid movie right after Cobra Kai ended that's in continuity with both the Jackie Chan film, with the classic Karate Kid Cobra Kai line. The potential, if they pulled this off, for this to be something really cool was very, very high. And instead, it felt like we got this rush job movie utterly devoid of any passion or understanding of what makes the franchise special, universal, and timeless. That it's historically, it's about, karate in a sense. But really, it's a father-son, sometimes father-daughter, surrogate father situation, a mentor situation about sons in need of fathers, fathers in need of sons, and that deep connection that they form through mentoring in the realm of karate, or kung fu in the case of one film. And this movie just turns it into nonstop jokes, action set pieces, plot lines, clever editing, visual fun cues. It's Karate Kid for the TikTok generation, minus all of the heart. It is the one with the most action, jokes, and plot lines, but by far the shortest runtime. It's just flying through scenes, sequences, set pieces at a lightning fast pace with no breathing room for you to care about the characters, the relationships, and even the way that it's structured. Like, the main mentoring thing for most of the runtime is a teenage kid training the karate pizza man. It's very peculiar, the plot they go with, and then the plot shifts to the mentoring story, and then we have two mentors for him just so that we can use that as a marketing hook to try and sell more tickets for a very lackluster, thrown together, haphazard Karate Kid movie. That these Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan on screen together, this should be really cool. It's so rushed, it's not satisfying. It doesn't deliver any of the promise of the premise. You just don't get what you actually want out of it. And so it's entirely digestible, but it's entirely fast food, junk food Karate Kid. It's just moves fast, lots of jokes, lots of action, easy to consume, but none of what has made this franchise stand the test of time. And so for me, this was the most disappointing film of the year. Be sure to check out my other end of the year list somewhere around here. If you want to join Patreon with an annual membership, use code Sean26 for 26% off a new annual membership. And thank you so much for watching in 2025, and I'm excited to see you in 2026. Or I guess you'll see me. I won't see you because that's not how cameras work.